We are in the process of going through the craziest presidential election cycle in any recent memory. We started out with the same two men who ran in the last election in 2020, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. It's just that this go around, Joe Biden is the incumbent, Donald Trump was running to unseat him. The two oldest major party candidates in U.S. presidential election history. So we had the same two guys, the oldest candidates for a major party in U.S. presidential election history. Then we had the debate. Joe Biden had been dealing with so many people saying that he was suffering from dementia, from Alzheimer's. He was suffering from major mental decline. And Joe Biden walked out on stage and proved that he was suffering from severe mental decline due to aging. It happens to plenty of people. I would say it probably happens to most people. We all lose some amount of mental faculties as we age. But what Joe Biden showed up for that debate and did shocked the country. One, it shocked the country because the Democrat Party and people in news media had been claiming Joe Biden was fine, that the tales of him suffering from mental decline were political positioning, that it was political theater to claim that he was suffering from age-related decline. Joe Biden showed up and proved that it was absolutely true. He was suffering from age-related decline. And people were shocked because so many of us have known somebody or know somebody who was suffering from some sort of severe mental decline due to aging. And for someone to show up on a national stage like that, in that kind of shape, shocked people. That there wasn't somebody in his family, in his staff at the White House, in his campaign staff, there wasn't somebody who was going to pull him aside and say, don't do this, you can't run. And so after the debate, you had a large percentage of the country, including Democrats, who without a doubt understood Joe Biden could not do another 4 years term as president. And while Democrats and their surrogates were panicking over Joe Biden's debate debacle, and let's be clear, Donald Trump is also suffering from age-related mental decline. It's just that Donald Trump is dumb as hell, and it's easy to hide mental decline for someone who's already dumb. You can just excuse it as, he's a liar, he's dumb. All this stuff. You can hide Donald Trump's age-related decline in the fact that he's also just a dumb human being who lies incessantly. So while Democrats were panicking from the debate, we then have a young man, 20 years old, registered Republican, try to assassinate their Republican candidate, Donald Trump. Donald Trump went to a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and this 20-year-old registered Republican tried to kill him. In most election cycles in the past, if a candidate suffered an attempted assassination and survived it, they would get a significant bump in the polls. I expected that Donald Trump, who was already leading prior to the debate, who was leading even more after the debate, would get a sizable bump in the polls because of the assassination attempt. That did not happen. That by itself tells you how unpopular this guy is. An event that is a significant event. I mean, Donald Trump wasn't severely injured. He got nicked in the ear, but he survived an assassination attempt. But he did not get that bump in the polls. He may have went up by a fraction of a percentage point, and that's it. Nothing noticeable. That assassination attempt did not move the needle. And then after the assassination attempt, Democrats who had been panicking, wanting Donald Trump to drop out, not knowing how they would handle a process of replacing him, got Joe Biden to drop out. And luckily, Kamala Harris, his vice president, behind the scenes, once he made the decision, started talking to the delegates, started getting the delegates on her side. And she gathered the delegate support to be the presumptive nominee for vice president. So we didn't have to figure out, was there going to be some kind of truncated primary, that whirlwind of a primary, where they're going to have candidates go to the Democrat National Convention and lobby the delegates to try and get them over to their side. To be clear, the only time either party has a candidate is after their convention. The Republicans hold their convention, and the delegates of the Republican Party nominate their candidate. Democrats do the same thing. They hold a convention, and delegates nominate their candidate. And I mean, you already still have Republicans trying to claim that Democrats, Kamala Harris, whoever, committed a coup against Joe Biden by forcing him out of the election. He wasn't the Democrat Party candidate. He was the presumptive nominee, but nobody had been selected as a candidate, and nobody would be selected as a candidate until after the convention when the delegates chose a candidate. And luckily, Kamala Harris got those delegates on her side. She did the work behind the scenes so that the Democrats didn't have to worry about some messy, short, crazy whirlwind primary system set up. So Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden. So we went from the two oldest candidates on major party tickets running against each other, the same two guys from the last election. Horrible debate where Joe Biden showed up without his brain. Assassination attempt on the Republican candidate. And then Biden, the Democrat candidate's replaced by his vice president, Kamala Harris. And the turn in momentum was palpable. You could feel the enthusiasm that was around Kamala Harris when she ended up becoming the nominee. They held the Democrat convention. She became the nominee. It was exciting. People were excited. Democrat voters finally were excited because they felt like they weren't pushing a candidate out for a losing cause. And then Kamala Harris had to select a running mate. She ended up selecting Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. And my two choices were 1 Walz, 2 Andy Beshear from Kentucky. That would have been my two choices for her to choose. I didn't think she would choose Walz. I thought she would choose a more standard corporate Democrat politician, Tim Walz. She chose Tim Walz, the most left of the short list for candidates for vice president. Tim Walz, a guy who is just a genuine, nice, lovable guy because he is just a normal guy. He's a retired school teacher. He's retired from the National Guard. He has a small teacher's pension. He has a small pension from his time as over 20 years in the National Guard. Tim Walz is just a normal guy. He doesn't have business interests. He doesn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars tied up in stocks. He's just a normal, average guy who is a retired school teacher who decided to go into politics. And people like him because he is genuine. He is just the genuine guy you see. And that gave a big boost, a massive boost to the Harris campaign. And so we went 2 old guys, same 2 guys from last election. Horrible debate, assassination attempt. One of the old guys getting replaced by his running mate. The running mate choosing a really popular, genuine running mate herself. Meanwhile, Donald Trump chose J.D. Vance, the most unpopular vice presidential candidate in the history of popularity polls. J.D. Vance, very much a slimy, former corporate politician. And that's where we're at. I mean, in this election cycle, what I'm going to talk about in this video is we have a choice. We have a choice between a genuine, normal campaign with a politician who wants to try and do good for the working Americans in this country, Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump, a guy who claims he knows nothing about Project 2025, but has listed policies he would enact that come directly from Project 2025. You have Donald Trump, the career con man, convicted felon, someone who was found civilly liable for sexual assault, running against Kamala Harris, former Attorney General, former Senator, current Vice President, and the choice couldn't be clearer, although there are some people that still claim they are undecided. I don't know how you get to that point. Let's break it down in this video. Thanks for watching. Hello again, YouTube family. I want to say thanks to those of you who actually click on and watch this video. As the introduction suggested, this is about the crazy current 2024 election cycle we're in, and it's taken me a long time to put this video together. As I've said before, I'm working 60-hour work weeks at my job, so this is what I do in my spare time, and I've put together a ton of information for this video. I'm trying to keep it to no more than an hour in length. I don't know that I'll accomplish that. There's a ton of information that I left out of the video, or else it would have been who knows how long. But thank you for those of you who are tuning in to this. Please give the video a like if you like the content. Please feel free to subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Let's dive in. As indicated by the image on the screen, I started out deciding to talk about, in this crazy election cycle, we had the initial clown show of a repeat of the 2020 election. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. We had old man versus older man. Joe Biden decided to drop out. He didn't have a lot of choice in that because, one, a lot of the large Democrat donors were refraining from donating money because they didn't think Joe Biden could win. A lot of Democrat voters didn't think Joe Biden could win. There are people within Democrat politics that didn't think Joe Biden could win. After his disastrous debate performance where he showed up without his brain, everybody realized Joe Biden was not going to be able to win the 2024 election. And he did the right thing by choosing to drop out of the election. However, as I've said before in a previous video, I think Joe Biden's ultimate legacy will be that he is the president that not only presided over but funded a genocide in Gaza. When the dust settles in the Middle East, conservatively, I would assume there's going to be at least 140,000 people dead in Gaza. Not just Palestinians, but Palestinians, doctors, aid workers, journalists. The death toll is going to be insane, tragic, and Joe Biden at any point could have cut off funding to Israel in carrying out what they did in Gaza, what they're currently still doing in Gaza. And ultimately, I think that will be Joe Biden's legacy. That said, he did do the right thing in dropping out of the presidential election. And so, instead of old guy versus older guy, Kamala Harris did the right thing and saved the Democrat Party. The position the Democrat Party is in is all their own making. The Democrat Party chose to try and gaslight the American people and claim that Joe Biden was fine. There was nothing wrong with him mentally. And they tried to carry out a fall primary where you had some people who did challenge Joe Biden. The three people that challenged Joe Biden in the primary were not well known. They weren't going to get elected in the primary. And Joe Biden basically won by default. You have the Republican Party that is claiming there was a coup against Joe Biden. There was no coup. Joe Biden had people around him, advisors, leaders within the Democrat Party that went to him to explain to him there's no way you are going to win this. And Joe Biden made the right decision to drop out. A difficult decision. I mean, as I said to a friend recently when he was visiting here in Vegas, there's no way you run for president of the United States without having a certain amount of ego. And to be able to put your ego aside and say that I'm going to drop out so we have a chance of winning this election, that was the right decision. The Democrats got themselves in that spot by not holding a real primary. The Democrats could have held a primary. The American people would have seen a long time ago that Joe Biden mentally was not up for another 4 years in office. And we could have had a lot of really bright, younger Democrat politicians competing in the primary where we would have chosen a really tough candidate for Donald Trump to have to compete with. As it is, Donald Trump does have a tough candidate to compete with in Kamala Harris. So now we're stuck with the clown Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. As I said, Kamala did the right thing, and once she realized that Joe Biden was going to drop out, she started contacting the Democrat electors in the Democrat primary, the delegates. She got a hold of the delegates. She coalesced them to support her and got herself as the presumptive nominee within a day, maybe a little over a day. She got all of the Biden electors to back her. And when the changeover happened, the enthusiasm within the Democrat Party was palpable. You could feel the enthusiasm as people finally felt hope. They had this younger female candidate who was intelligent, well-spoken, and had a history as a prosecutor. She can prosecute a case on her side. That being said, Kamala Harris had a very short amount of time to put together a campaign for her. She basically had to use the Biden-Harris campaign infrastructure, and she's received a lot of criticisms for not having specific policies. she didn't have a lot of time to put together policies. I mean, this happened so fast, and she had such a shortened amount of time to run a presidential campaign. She did a phenomenal job of putting together a campaign and getting her policy agenda ideology lined up. She does have some specific policies. A lot of what she came up with is basically intent of what she intends to do. For that matter, Donald Trump, a lot of what his Agenda 47 is just stuff he intends to do. It's not specific logistical policy on how he's going to get from point A to point B. So for both Trump and Harris, a lot of what they have is plans on what they want to achieve without specific logistics on how to get there. That being said, Kamala Harris does have some actual specific policy plans, and Trump does have some specific policy plans. And I'm trying to put together a video to explain the contrast in these two individuals. So with Biden on the ticket, the polling was looking atrocious for him. When Harris became the presumptive nominee, the polling did get better, and this is polling from August, so this is a couple of months ago. And as you can see, on the national level, she was ahead by about 1.9% in August. Trump was leading in Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada. Harris was leading in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And those are the key 6 states that likely will determine the election. Since I pulled these polls, the polls have gone down for Harris, they've gone back up for Harris, and basically we are looking at a dead heat polling-wise. Harris has a small lead within the margin of error on the national level, and within the battleground states, some states Trump's ahead within the margin of error, some states Harris is up within the margin of error, but the battleground states, I've not seen them leave the margin of error since it's become Trump versus Harris. So it's a matter of which one of those battleground states either Trump's able to pull away from Harris, because those are states that Biden won in 2020. Harris needs to win enough of those states to come up with 270 electoral votes. Or a matter of which ones of those states Harris is able to keep blue in this election cycle. In this election, abortion will be weighing heavily again. Since the Supreme Court that Donald Trump put together, he got 3 out of the 9 justices put on the court. All 3 were far right-wing, theocratical ideologues who are willing to make court decisions based on their belief, not necessarily the Constitution, which is their job, is to determine along constitutional grounds. But they are all 3 hard-right ideological theocrats. And they joined 3 other already hard-right ideological theocrats that were on the court, and so now we have a 6-3 majority in favor of far right-wing ideologies. And so Donald Trump put that together with his 3 Supreme Court choices. Granted, he shouldn't have had those 3 choices because Obama had a choice stolen from him by Mitch McConnell. That's neither here nor there. At this point, that's the way the court's set up. It's 6-3 far right-wing ideologies. They chose to overturn Roe versus Wade. So now we have this crazy situation where some states have abortion basically illegal, whether they have exceptions in their law or not. The way the laws are written, it basically bans abortion. We have women who are dying right now in America because they can't get the care they need because you have the situation where abortions typically take place, the vast majority of abortions take place in the first 10 weeks of pregnancy, when a woman first finds out she's pregnant and determines she's either not mentally, emotionally, financially, whatever, prepared to have a baby, and decides to terminate her pregnancy. Beyond that, you have women who have not really abortions, but things like the D&C, the medical abortion procedure, when they have a pregnancy, go awry. I would guess, you have the Republican side in this trying to claim that Democrats support abortion all the way up to the moment of birth, and then you've had Trump and these various idiots saying that Democrats support post-birth abortion, which isn't a thing. Once a baby's born, if you kill the child, it's just murder at that point. And there's no doctor who's going to commit murder, allow somebody to commit murder on a newly born baby. As far as the late-term abortions, that's a myth. It's not late-term abortions. It's late-term medical procedures because a pregnancy has gone awry. If I had to guess, in the history of human beings existing on this earth, there has never been a woman who's been pregnant for 7 months, 7.5 months, 8 months, 8.5 months, who willy-nilly decided, now I want to abort my pregnancy. When a medical abortion procedure happens later in a pregnancy, it's happening to a woman who wanted a baby. It's happening to families that wanted a baby. And unfortunately, something went awry with the pregnancy. The child died, or the child has some kind of issue with development to where they're going to be born dead, or they're going to die within minutes of being born. You have situations where fetuses develop complications, and if they are born, they're just going to suffer for minutes, hours, in a very short life before they die. And doctors, unfortunately, have to, when this happens, talk to the pregnant woman and figure out what she wants to do. Do you want to carry out with the birth of this child? 99.9% chance it's going to die within minutes or hours of being born, and it's going to suffer. Your child will suffer to death till it dies. It will never leave the hospital alive. And when women choose to have the medical abortion procedure, the D&C or whichever procedure, it's not something they're deciding willy-nilly. It's not something they're deciding happily about. It's tragic. A family is losing the potential life that was inside the mother because of complications. And these insane abortion laws are preventing that from happening because of the fact that it's later in the pregnancy, and the procedure for aborting the pregnancy after the complications arise is a medical abortion procedure, and those are now outlawed. And so doctors basically have to have the women bleeding out in the parking lots of hospitals, waiting to the point where they're about to die, and the doctor tries to save them before they die by going through the procedure. And it's insane. It's insane. That's why I support, personally, no restrictions on abortion. And if you put a restriction on abortion, say a 15-week abortion ban, the only way I would support that is if that it is written into the law that if there are complications with the pregnancy, it's up to the woman and her doctor what to do at that point. No penalties for the doctor, no penalties for the woman. If the pregnancy goes awry and a medical abortion procedure is needed later in the pregnancy, it can be accomplished without any threat to the doctor, without any threat to the woman, because that's what doesn't exist now. There are threats of imprisonment to the doctor, of losing their ability to practice medicine, threats for imprisonment to the women. It's insane. And that's why all these abortion bans, they have nothing to do with children, they have nothing to do with caring about life, they have nothing to do with being pro-life. It has to do with controlling women. And it's absurd. It's archaic. And that's why in this election cycle, there is a massive gap, a historic gap of women supporting the Democrat Party over the Republican Party because of what the Republican Party's done to themselves, which is knowing they couldn't pass legislation in Congress, they couldn't get enough people to pass abortion restrictions in Congress, so they went through the court to do it. So right now we have Donald Trump, J.D. Vance versus Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Trump chose J.D. Vance for whatever reason. According to articles, Trump's two idiot sons and his idiot donor, Elon Musk, pushed him to choose J.D. Vance to be his vice presidential candidate. J.D. Vance, again, historically unpopular vice presidential candidate. That includes Sarah Palin and other supremely unpopular vice presidential candidates. Kamala Harris won the Veep stakes. She chose Tim Walz, and for me, myself, if I had a choice out of the short list she had to be vice president, I would have wanted 1, Tim Walz, or 2, Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky. And I didn't think she would choose Tim Walz because he was the most left-wing progressive of the choices. I didn't think she would choose him. I was ecstatic when she chose Tim Walz as her running mate. Donald Trump chose J.D. Vance, someone who struggles to identify with normal people. J.D. Vance is the guy who wrote the Hillbilly Elegy, which basically stereotypes everybody in Appalachia. That's why Andy Beshear was my second choice for the vice presidential candidate for Kamala Harris, because Andy Beshear is an intelligent, well-spoken guy from Appalachia. He would have been a good person to debate J.D. Vance in the vice presidential debate. Tim Walz is an excellent pick. Kamala Harris is vice presidential candidate. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, with a small majority Democrat in the state legislature. Tim Walz passed a ton of great legislation in Minnesota. Tim Walz is not a rich politician from a wealthy, prominent family. He's a retired school teacher. Tim Walz doesn't have millions of dollars in investments or in businesses. He's literally a retired school teacher living off a school teacher pension. And if you are a school teacher, if you know somebody who's a school teacher, you know school teacher pensions are meager. At least it's a pension. It's money you get paid after you quit working, after you retire. But Tim Walz is very much the normal, average, happy, upbeat guy. Tim Walz also retired from the National Guard. He has a small, modest National Guard pension. And then he was a representative from Minnesota, then he was governor, and now he's running to be vice president. And I hope Harris Walz wins, myself. And Tim Walz, super likable, super popular. He was a phenomenal choice. And the contrast between he and J.D. Vance, a guy who is the lapdog of a tech billionaire, Peter Thiel, basically funded J.D. Vance's run for the Senate, and he's going to have an immense amount of control if Trump Vance get elected. And Trump presumably chose J.D. Vance because he is somebody who has shown he will be a lapdog to Donald Trump. Whereas in the Trump term prior to Biden's term, Trump found out that Mike Pence wasn't willing to try and steal the election for him. And so Trump chose somebody who has no personality and a complete willingness to be a bootlicker for Donald Trump that will lie, cheat, and steal if needed for Trump. For Kamala Harris, she is the vice president of the current administration. One thing she has to deal with is the unpopularity of funding the Israel genocide on the Palestinians. She has not done a good job of distancing herself from Joe Biden's policies, and she's had to walk a very tight line on that. She's currently the vice president of Joe Biden. She didn't want to crap on Joe Biden, but she needed to separate herself in some ways from Biden on how she's going to govern if she were to become president. So, I mean, she's had a very thin line to walk, to not crap on the administration she's currently a part of, but to push the hopeful administration she plans on running if she were to get elected. She's done a decent job. She has a very positive, hopeful campaign, and part of her not having hardcore policies is because she had such a short time, because of her not having logistics on how she's going to accomplish everything. It's partially because of the short amount of time she's had to deal with running for president, and it's partly to give less criticism for people to pick apart. Donald Trump, his policies, to me, if he were to get elected and try and enact the things he plans to enact, some of which I think are nearly impossible logistically, it would overall be a negative for Americans. So Kamala Harris has to deal with being part of the current administration, which wasn't popular. However, they did get a lot done. I was surprised. Joe Biden is a right-of-center corporate Democrat. I was surprised at how much he got done and how many good things he got done. Even after Republicans took control of the House in the midterms, he still accomplished getting legislation passed. That was a good job for Biden to be able to accomplish. His foreign policy sucked because of the Israel-Gaza stuff. So let's go into some of the rhetoric that's involved here. Because one of the things that Trump is going to have to deal with is that there is a ton of horrible rhetoric that's come from him. And I've got some slides to go through on Agenda 47, but this is from a Forbes article. Trump called for mass arrests and prosecutions of people who oppose his claims on voter fraud. He has, since the 2020 election, been claiming without any evidence whatsoever that the election was stolen, when in fact it was really Trump who was trying to steal the election, first with his fake slate of electors, then with his sycophant fans' attack on the Capitol. It didn't work. And he claims that his prosecutions and arrests would include lawyers, political operatives, donors, illegal voters, which Donald Trump is that's just who he considers to be illegal voters, not that they're actually illegal voters, and corrupt election officials. So Donald Trump already has a massive hit list if he were to get elected. To go through some of the rhetoric that he has that is problematic if you're really a patriotic American. Donald Trump has claimed that the Haitian immigrants in Springfield were eating dogs and cats. This story literally was started by a neo-Nazi group called Blood Tribe. He's repeating a neo-Nazi fabricated story in that whole attack on Haitians. Those Haitian immigrants are legal immigrants. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have both called them illegal, and when they've been pushed on it, they've said they should be illegal, which is insane. Their rhetoric has caused threats against Springfield residents, including bomb threats that have led to evacuations of public schools and closures of universities. Trump accused the Haitian arrivals of having destroyed Springfield and vowed to get them the hell out. Again, they're legal immigrants with chilling chance of sending them back at Trump rallies. That is in no way American, patriotic, anything of the sort. Trump has used the same words Hitler did about immigrants, referring to them poisoning the blood of the country. He's painted criminals who stormed the Capitol as patriots and heroes, and he's talked about abolishing birthright citizenship, again, which is insane and unpatriotic, un-American. And he plans to carry out the largest mass deportation initiative in U.S. history, something I'm going to talk about maybe at the end of this video, more in depth. And as Jason Stanley, a Yale scholar and author of How Fascism Works, has pointed out, some people think he's trolling when he uses this fascist language, but as he said, we know that the worst regimes in history, people also thought they were joking. It wouldn't be fascism without that feature of just claiming that the fascist wannabe dictator isn't actually serious. Trump vowed to renew the Muslim travel ban. He said, we didn't take people from certain areas of the world. I didn't want to have people ripping down and burning our shopping centers and killing people. And he said, we're not taking people from infested countries. This is all absurd fascist language. And there aren't Muslims in this country that are ripping down and burning shopping centers and killing people. Going on with more of Trump's problematic language. He said, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the country. Again, you have people supporting Trump, defending him by saying that he's not serious. And again, it wouldn't be fascism without that aspect of people claiming he's not serious. Trump has routinely referred to immigrants as animals, just generally referring to immigrants as animals. He's like, I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people. These are animals. I said, no, they're not humans. They're animals. That's Trump's words, not my words. And that is the kind of rhetoric that is so problematic. Should cause people to think very hard before they vote for Donald Trump. Trump has said there's nobody better, smarter, or a better leader than Viktor Orban, who is the dictator in Hungary. Orban has this illiberal democracy, which is privileged conservative white Christians while imperiling LGBTQ, Hungarians, immigrants, and the Roma minority. And these are the types of people that Donald Trump not only looks up to, but celebrates. Hopefully I'll make it through this video. It's so long. So that is a slice of, that is a very small slice of the problematic rhetoric you have coming from Donald Trump. And the problematic presidency you would have if Donald Trump were to get elected. For Kamala Harris, she's had Obama, both Barack and Michelle Obama, out campaigning for her. She's had Bill Clinton out campaigning for her. Recently, I read a political article talking about Bill Clinton. He was in North Carolina campaigning for Kamala Harris, and he was still getting large crowds, large cheers, ovations. And Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, they are, in my lifetime, by far the two most charismatic, well-spoken, slick politicians, the two most well-spoken, slick politicians the Democrat Party has put up in a presidential election. Bill Clinton still, with all of his faults, all of his flaws, he's still able to move a crowd. And he's still able to speak in a way that gets his message to the people that he's talking to. And he's made great points against Donald Trump. Barack and Michelle Obama, who are both excellent speakers, both very intelligent, have made excellent points against Donald Trump. And so Kamala Harris has a great group of people that are supporting her. One thing, and perhaps this will make some Democrat voters mad, some of the true blue dog Democrat, whatever you want to call the diehard Democrat supporters. Kamala Harris is not going to be a savior of anything. Her job is to keep Donald Trump from getting back into office and tanking this country and sending this country down the crapper. Donald Trump talked to executives of fossil fuel companies and basically told them, give me $1 billion for my campaign and I'll let you write your own legislation. You can control whatever regulations you want to control. He contacted Miriam Adelson. The Adelsons, you had Sheldon and Miriam Adelson in previous years, have supported Donald Trump. In 2016, they gave him $100 million. In 2020, they gave him $100 million. Donald Trump went back to Miriam Adelson, Sheldon Adelson's widow, and told her again, give me $100 million and I will let you control Middle East policy. The Adelsons are diehard Zionists. The reason why the American embassy got moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is because of the Adelsons' donations. The reason why the Golan Heights were given to Israel is because of the $100 million from Miriam Adelson. Donald Trump is literally just selling policy. Give me money, you can control policy. I mean, he ran initially in 2016 on this drain the swamp rhetoric, which was bullshit. He filled the White House up with swamp creatures. And Donald Trump is all about the swamp. You have some of his supporters that believe somehow that he's super rich and he doesn't need money. Donald Trump is a billionaire on paper because of properties. Donald Trump does not have the kind of cash sitting around to run a presidential campaign. He does not have that kind of money. He needs money. He has been going out and begging for money. He's gotten money from Miriam Adelson. He's got money from plenty of large, wealthy donors, corporations. He's gotten a lot of money from Elon Musk. In recent months, you've seen Elon Musk a lot out supporting Donald Trump. Elon Musk had claimed he was going to give Donald Trump $45 million per month till the election back in maybe July or August. Elon Musk is a businessman who has a lot of government contracts. He depends a lot on government contracts. It is a direct conflict of interest to have Elon Musk pumping massive amounts of money into Donald Trump's PAC in exchange for Elon Musk being given a place in the administration so that he can make sure that his companies continue to get these large, massive contracts from the federal government. Elon Musk is one of these guys who claims to be this super successful capitalist. He's not. His success has depended so much on government money, and he wants to make sure that government money keeps coming in. And he's buying his way into a presidential administration if Trump were to win. John F. Kennedy Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., is supporting Donald Trump. And RFK Jr. went to the Harris campaign and offered to end his independent run and support Harris if they promised him a role in their administration. They said no. And I don't disagree with them. Robert Kennedy Jr. is basically a mercenary politician at this point, trying to angle to get himself a role in either administration, whoever will have him. And the Trump administration is the one that decided to take him up on that. And so RFK Jr. is supporting Donald Trump, not because he supports Donald Trump or because he likes Donald Trump, because that's the candidate who was willing to say, I will give you a place in my administration if you support me. It's all transactional bullshit. And I hope people see through the BS of this. So you have the swamp creatures again coalescing around Donald Trump. It will be a swampy mess if he gets elected. And then RFK Jr. Unfortunately, Robert Kennedy Jr. is from a iconic Democratic political family. JFK, RFK Sr. were, and still are, massively popular Democrat politicians of the past. And you have the Kennedy family basically disavowing RFK Jr. because of what he's done, tarnishing that family brand in this election cycle. It's unfortunate. It's truly unfortunate what he's done to try and get himself a position in a presidential administration. Now I want to go into the two candidates' agendas. So you have Trump. He calls his agenda Agenda 47. First, let's start out with his video.
You're not going to be able to sell those guns. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
And so that was Trump literally saying it will be a bloodbath in this country if he doesn't get elected. For Trump's platform, he has the seal the border, which is not a logistical policy, legislative proposal. That's just something he wants to do. And it's a very vague thing to seal the border. Enact the largest deportation in U.S. history. Again, I want to talk about that individually, specifically later on. But that is something that is logistically nearly an impossibility. I don't know how that would be carried out. I can tell you right now, Donald Trump has no idea how he would carry that out. He has talked about using the U.S. military and National Guard, but logistically and legally, that I don't know that it's possible to be done. He plans to increase manufacturing and energy production. Again, no logistical legislative agenda to get from point A to point B, just basically something I want to do from Trump there. And Trump already had 4 years in office, and he lost manufacturing jobs to the tune of almost 300,000 manufacturing jobs lost while he was in office. So to think he's going to somehow increase manufacturing in America would be utterly absurd. He didn't do it before. He's not going to do it again. As far as energy production, all he's going to do is open up more land for oil companies to drill on. And as I said before in a previous video, there's already millions of acres of land that oil companies in America have access to drill on that they're not drilling on. So giving them more land doesn't mean they're going to drill. And even if you do set aside new land for an oil company to drill on, it takes years to start drilling and producing oil out of that land. Large tax cuts for workers. Very vague. Donald Trump passed his tax cuts bill in 2017, and over 85% of that went to the wealthiest Americans. Corporations and wealthy Americans benefited the most from Donald Trump's tax cuts, and Donald Trump did get together with a group of wealthy donors and let them know he was going to cut their taxes further, that he was going to take care of them. There's no reason to think that Trump will create tax cuts that are going to benefit workers. He has talked about eliminating taxes on tipped wages. There are a very small number of low-income workers whose wages are tips. And then you have to go into how do you define tips. If tips aren't specifically designed, then you could have a wealthy lawyer say that to a client, I charge $600 per hour, but I will charge you $400 per hour if you call $200 of that tips. You have all kinds of ways for wealthy individuals to claim the money they make is tips instead of income. So Donald Trump's plans are not necessarily going to help workers as far as in middle class and lower income workers. And the no taxes on tips will affect a very minuscule amount of actual worker bees in this economy. Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Again, very vague, no logistical method of doing that. And he belongs to the party that has wanted to eliminate both Social Security and Medicaid since they were created. He wants to enact a transgender sports ban. Again, something I don't agree with, because once you go through the full cycle of hormone therapies, if you're a trans male, your genetics are not distinguishable from a cis male. If you're a trans female and you've gone through the full cycle of hormone therapies, your physiology is no different from that of a cis female. However, Republicans have been harping on this anti-trans stuff for years at this point, and for the average American, it doesn't rank very high and something they're concerned about. So I don't know that that's something that is going to get a lot of votes for Donald Trump, but it will certainly turn some people off from Donald Trump. Strip federal funding from schools that teach critical race theory and radical gender ideology. Again, you got critical race theory, which is just teaching real history, and then radical gender ideology is, again, anti-LGBTQ. It's just hate. I've said before that the Republican Party at this point is no more than the party of fear and hate. And that's what you hear from them constantly. Fear of this people, hate these people, fear these things, hate these things. Impose stricter voting requirements. Very vague. Don't know what that would look like, but I guarantee you, coming from the Republican Party, period, would be bad. Coming from Trump could be horrendous. Keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Again, something he wants to do, but not necessarily something that he has a logistical method of achieving. Now we move into the Agenda 47 from the Trump website. First on that list is the big tech. Trump will pass an executive order barring any federal department from working with other entities to censor Americans and prohibit federal money from being used to combat misinformation. On its face, anybody in this country should be able to oppose that. Why do you want to ensure misinformation gets put out on social media? I mean, social media should be making sure that misinformation doesn't get spread to people. If your party is in favor of misinformation, you've got a problem to begin with. He wants to alter Section 230 to open up social media platforms for greater legal liability, which would, in the end, hurt creators on those platforms. If they could be sued for instance, what people say in, for instance, comments on their pages. As far as climate change, Trump wants to leave the Paris Climate Accord again. He got out of the Paris Climate Accord. Biden got back into it. And Trump says he'll leave it again. Again, we're already suffering the problems from climate change, and Trump will just make them worse. He wants to get rid of Biden policies that restrict emissions and target 67% of new vehicles to be electric by 2032. He wants to massively scale up oil and gas production. His whole drill, baby drill crap, which would be devastating for climate. When it comes to climate, it's all bad for Trump. He doesn't have a good policy. On crime, he wants to hire and retain police officers and increase their protection from legal liability. Already, and I have a video on my channel about the qualified immunity that police have, which I would like to see done away with. If Trump increases protection from legal liability for cops, this will become a police state way faster and way worse than it already is. Push policies such as stop and frisk, which again is a racist policy that ends up with racist ends. Direct the DOJ to dismantle every gang, street crew, and drug network in America. That's something that's not going to, the logistics of that aren't going to happen. Deploy federal troops, including the National Guard, to restore order when local officers refuse to act. And that it sounds like when it's in Trump's opinion, police officers are refusing to act or can't act, and he wants to basically institute martial law randomly to oppose, say, a protest, even a peaceful protest. Impose the death penalty for drug dealers, drug cartels, and human traffickers. And while I oppose the death penalty in general, there are some people that are going to like some of these policies. There are plenty of people that are very pro-death penalty. As far as the Justice Department, Trump would appoint 100 U.S. attorneys who are aligned with his policies. Again, hiring sycophants within the federal government, have those attorneys investigate left-leaning district attorneys. Why are you going to investigate somebody unless you already suspect them of committing a crime? Establish a DOJ task force on protecting the right to self-defense. And already, the right to self-defense, we have the right to self-defense. You don't have to protect it. Things like the stand your ground laws make it to where if there's no witnesses around and you kill somebody, you can always claim you were defending yourself. Fight the anti-conservative bias at law schools and law firms. So basically try and put our right-wing ideology into those law schools and law firms, most likely with threatening penalties if they don't comply. For the economy, Donald Trump wants to cut taxes again. Like I said, he's already talked to the wealthy people and said he's going to make sure and take care of them and cut their taxes. Slash federal regulations. You can't just willy-nilly go through slashing regulations for the point of slashing regulations. There's a lot of regulations we need that protect our air and water, that protect us, that make it the buildings that we live and work in safe. There's a lot of regulations we need. You start cutting regulations, and this country's going to go down the crapper fast. I mean, are there regulations we could cut that we probably don't need? Sure. But you've got to go through and analyze each and every regulation before you cut it. And if you think Trump's going to go through and analyze anything, you're delusional. Impose baseline tariffs on foreign goods, and the tariffs will go up on countries that have unfair trade practices, based on Donald Trump's opinion. And this is Donald Trump's across-the-board tariff ideology that plenty of people have opined on. Economists, businessmen. Donald Trump's tariff policy would create inflation in this country. There's no way you're going to put across-the-board tariffs on goods imported to this country and not cause an increase in prices. Donald Trump, again, one of the dumbest people who has ever served in the White House in this country. Donald Trump is a blubbering idiot. And he talks over and over again, and you can tell he has no clue what a tariff is, what it does. Donald Trump talks like if he puts a tariff on China, that they're going to be shipping boatloads of pallets of cash to America. That's not what a tariff is. For one, the goods that come to this country from China, the vast majority of them are American corporations that are having those goods made in China. You put a tariff on China, they're going to charge the corporation. The corporation is going to charge you. It's going to just all filter down to the consumer. You'll just be paying more money for your products, and if those products don't have manufacturing here in America that can compete, that's already in place, you're just going to have to pay more money for the products. Is it possible for tariffs to be good? It absolutely is. But you have to have already manufacturing set up here that you're trying to promote. And most of the manufacturing we don't do anymore. And so then with education, parents elect school principals. You should not have school principals being an elected position. They need to be people who have educations. I mean, you start doing an election-wise, you could have some random guy with no college whatsoever. You could have a high school dropout with a GED end up as a principal of a school, running based on what they think or what religion they are. That would be insane. You need people who have degrees in education, being principals, knowing what they're doing, running a school. Cut public funding to any school teaching critical race theory in teacher tenure. So they want to attack teachers, and they want to attack teaching factual history. Not a surprise. Create a body to only certify teachers who embrace patriotic values. Very vague term, could mean a lot of things. But hopefully you understand, coming from not only the Republican Party, but coming from Trump, what that patriotic values means. So basically, only certifying teachers who are right-wing ideologues. Encourage prayer in school. Prayer has no place in school. We are a secular society. The creators of this country framed this country as a secular society where you would only have freedom of religion, but freedom from religion, making it easier to kick out troublemakers. Again, a very vague notion. Who's going to get kicked out? You're going to see people of color. You're going to see people who are perhaps in the LGBT community. You're going to see minorities. People who are already marginalized being kicked out of school and being denied the chance for the baseline K through 12 education. Allow teachers to carry concealed firearms. The last thing we need in schools are more guns. That's not going to work. Encourage school choice programs, not a surprise. That, without a doubt, is because Betsy DeVos donates large amounts of money to Donald Trump's campaign. For foreign policy, force European allies to pay back the U.S. for depleting its military stockpiles in the Ukraine-Russia war. That will not happen, and it shouldn't happen. We made the deal back in the 90s that we would defend Ukraine if they denuclearized. They did, and right now, in supporting Ukraine, we are holding up our end of the bargain. We're saying that the word of America means something, that it has value. Donald Trump has already tried to make the world understand that if he's in office, America's promises have no value. And the military equipment, weapons, arms, ammo that we're sending to Ukraine is older stuff that we are then going to replace for our own troops. Take a more hardline stance on China and place restrictions on Chinese-owned infrastructure in the U.S. and build a missile defense shield. That sounds like he basically wants to build an Iron Dome for the United States, which I think we're still waiting for the missile defense system Reagan promised back in the 80s. For health care, require federal agencies to buy medicines and medical devices manufactured in the United States. That's all well and good, except for the limited amount of medical supplies and devices that are manufactured in the United States. In order for that to really have any salience, people in the United States have to start manufacturing that stuff. It's going to be more expensive to be manufactured here, and again, costs will go up. If you're willing to accept that, so be it. Bar federal agencies from other countries from purchasing essential drugs. I don't know that federal agencies from other countries really purchase essential drugs from the U.S. I know during COVID, Donald Trump sent COVID testing equipment to Russia because he wanted to kiss Putin's ass. So he's not really holding up to his own ideology there. Created an executive order saying the government will only pay pharmaceutical companies the best price they offer to foreign nations. That's all well and good if we just did Medicare for all and let Medicare negotiate all pharmaceutical prices. Pharmaceuticals would go down. It's not that difficult. On homelessness, this is a train wreck. Now, I would have to say among the most powerless in our society are the unhoused. Ban public camping by homeless people. Basically, criminalize being poor. Give homeless people the choice to get treatment or to be arrested. Again, criminalizing being poor. Create large tent cities where the homeless would be relocated to. These sites are to have doctors, social workers, and mental institutions on site. I can tell you right now, I have no doubt Donald Trump and any of the Republicans in the Republican Party would have no problem rounding up homeless people, shipping them out to the middle of nowhere in the desert. Like, for instance, I live in Nevada. Outside of Las Vegas and Reno, there's a lot of empty desert. There's some military installations and stuff, but there's a lot of empty desert. I have no doubt someone like Donald Trump or J.D. Vance would have no problem having homeless people rounded up and sent out to the desert. Perhaps they would give them tents, but nobody around the Republican Party is going to fund having doctors, social workers, and mental health care available for people. All this is an out of sight, out of mind. This is a plan that, if they tried to enact it, would just result in homeless people being shipped out to the middle of nowhere and left to die, and they would die. That is an absolute disaster, a humanitarian disaster. For immigration, prohibit undocumented immigrants from receiving any benefits. End birthright citizenship for undocumented immigrants. That is, if somebody is here undocumented, and I want to talk about that also, the undocumented, when I go on my rant at the end of this about Trump's mass deportation nonsense. Reinstitute a travel ban, Muslim travel ban, from certain countries. Pause refugee admissions. And that is to say, he wants to not allow any refugees into this country. Even though we create a lot of the reason that refugees exist. Mandate extreme vetting of foreign nationals. Donald Trump, again, is a blubbering moron. We already have the most stringent immigration standards. It takes years. It takes, I think, around 10 years, maybe longer, for people trying to get into this country legally. We already have processes for vetting, and this, all Trump ever says is extreme vetting. He never explains what his idea of extreme vetting is. Basically, it's not letting anybody in unless they're white and rich. It sounds like. Block federal grants to sanctuary cities. Again, he's trying to attack the enemy, the other party. It's basically Democrats who run cities that will run as sanctuary cities, where they will not turn illegals over. If they discover illegals in their city, they're not going to turn them over to immigration. End catch and release. Catch and release is people that come here seeking asylum. They come across the border Border Patrol catches them, and they request asylum. Border Patrol takes their information, sets them up with a immigration date, which is typically years in the future, and then lets them free into the country because it's completely legal to come here and request asylum. Close the southern border to asylum seekers. Suspend the visa program, including the visa lottery program and family visas, which, by the way, is how Donald Trump's wife's in-law, or her parents, Donald Trump's in-laws, came here through that system. He basically wants to deal with a system that his family has used. And the thing is, Donald Trump will want to end some of that for some people, but not for him. Donald Trump has businesses where he hires foreign nationals to work at his properties because he can pay them less money. And he's not going to end that for him. He may end it for you. He's not going to end it for him. Transgender rights. As the parent of a transgender child, not only Donald Trump's, but the Republican Party's in general, horrible stance towards transgender people is one reason why I would never support a Republican right now for anything. Any healthcare provider who provides gender-affirming care would be terminated from Medicare and Medicaid. Strip federal funding from any school where any school official suggests that a child may be trapped in the wrong body. pressed the U.S. Congress to pass legislation saying that the only recognized genders in the U.S. are male and female, and that gender is assigned at birth. Basically, Trump's saying he wants to legislate people from being able to be who they are if they are transgender. If you have somebody who is born biologically male, but their brain tells them they are female, and so they have their body not matching up to their brain, and they have no way of aligning their brain and their body together through gender-affirming care, that's the kind of thing that causes massive amounts of suicides among the transgender community. Donald Trump would cause a lot of people to commit suicide. His transgender stance by itself, as I said, as the parent of a transgender child, I would not support him in any way, shape, or form because of that. He is just going to hurt people with policy like that. And finally, for colleges for Donald Trump. Like Donald Trump has any clue about college. He went to college, but my guess is his dad paid for his degree. Get rid of college and university accreditors and create new ones that impose Republican Party values on institutions. Levying large fines on colleges and universities that the President Trump believes discriminates against students, then using the money from those fines to create an online American Academy that teaches the full spectrum of knowledge and skills. The full spectrum of knowledge and skills. Donald Trump has no knowledge or skills. And he's already started one scam university, Trump University. And all this American Academy would be indoctrination. You hear the Republicans talking constantly about indoctrination. And it is projection. They are the ones who are indoctrinating people. But that is Donald Trump. His Agenda 47, his platform items, and as I said, it would be straight up horrible for America. As far as Kamala Harris, her plan, and these, I know every page is 1 through 10, just go with it. How about that? Reinstitute the expanded child tax credit. That was something the Biden administration did at the beginning of their administration. It nearly cut childhood poverty in half. So yes, reinstitute the expanded child tax credit. Make it permanent. Why not reduce child poverty in America? Why would we not want to reduce that? A $6,000 tax cut to pay for the first year of a child's life? By all means. You have Republicans who claim they care about children, about life, and all this. They would absolutely attack the plan to give a tax cut for average families who are bringing a child, a newborn, a new life into this country, into their lives. And studies have shown that the first year of a child's life is really expensive. They're going through diapers like crazy. They're going through clothes. It's a really expensive time. So yes, by all means, $600 tax cut for people who have a baby to help pay for the first year of the child's life. Expand the earned income tax credit. That is to try and help more people. That's expand the earned income tax credit to more people, more average workers. Invest in building resilient domestic food production and supply chains. Why not? Why not increase domestic food production and supply chains? That's one of the things we learned during COVID, that we need more domestic production and we need more in-house supply chains so we're not so dependent on the rest of the world. We revitalize competition in consumer food and the grocery market, and that is to keep the ever consolidating corporations from consolidating more, where they can absolutely control prices on groceries and food. Press Congress to pass a federal ban on price gouging. She's talked about that a lot. People have attacked that, but we already have price gouging laws in some states. Why not have it on a federal level? There's nothing wrong with saying you can't gouge on people on prices. Expand and make permanent the ACA tax credits. I would rather have Medicare for all single payer system, but that's probably not going to happen. So yes, expand and make permanent the tax credits available in the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. Tackle the opioid crisis. And again, some of these things, like I'm saying, they are not logistical explanations of how she's going to get from point A to point B. She wants to tackle the opioid crisis. There's a number of ways to do that. I'm sure she will put together people who will come together with a plan on how to do that. Extend the $35 insulin cost and $2,000 out-of-pocket cost limit to all Americans. That's something that the Biden-Harris administration did, and yeah, by all means. Right now it's available to seniors. They want to make it available to everybody. Why not do that? Accelerate the speed of Medicare negotiations of prescription drug costs. They got some drugs being negotiated by Medicare. She's saying she wants to speed it up and get more pharmaceuticals in that Medicare negotiation. And if we have Medicare negotiating drug pharmaceutical cost, it will bring down the cost of pharmaceuticals. Increase competition and demand transparency in the healthcare industry. That would be great if she could get transparency by itself in the healthcare industry. Would be phenomenal. Invest in a thriving clean energy economy. By all means, we subsidize fossil fuel companies. If we were to turn from subsidizing fossil fuel companies to subsidizing clean energy companies, we're going to start seeing jobs created, good paying jobs that Americans will be able to get, and we will start creating a cleaner economy, and we will start working towards battling climate change. Lower energy costs for families through tax credits on home energy technologies. Has been done for years, and it can continue to be done for years. And yes, if you in some way give individuals monetary incentives to, say, put solar panels on their house, the government can do things to make it where it ends up being beneficial financially for you to do that. And we should be doing that. Invest in building resilient domestic food production and supply chains. Lower America's cost by fighting against junk fees and fraud. That's what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau does. And yes, the government should absolutely be fighting against fraud and fees that are being charged that shouldn't be charged. Create 1.2 million new affordable rental homes, and that's part of trying to get home affordability down. Whether you rent, whether you're buying a house, the prices need to come down, and the interest rates need to be at a reasonable amount where people can afford to buy homes again. Neighborhood homes tax credit, creating a tax incentive for building affordable homes. That's for the creators of the homes, the builders. Create a tax incentive for them to build more affordable homes, because right now you have a lot of builders who are building custom homes because they make more profit from custom homes. In some markets, it's out of control. In California, it's super bad. Here in Nevada, where I'm at, it's also bad. There's a lot of custom homes sitting empty because people can't afford them. Meanwhile, there's plenty of average people who want to be able to find a home they can afford to buy. Launch a $40 billion local innovation fund for housing expansion, and that's for cities, counties, municipalities to start expanding house creation. $50,000 business startup at tax deduction. Absolutely. Incentivize people. If somebody wants to start a business, it's going to cost them on the front end. By all means, create tax incentives for them to do that. A small business expansion fund providing low or zero interest loans to expand small businesses. Again, why would you not want to do that? You can give low interest or no interest loans to small businesses so they can expand and grow and make more money, be more successful, hire more people. Allocate 1/3 of federal contract dollars to small businesses. Again, like I was saying, Elon Musk is pumping so much money into Donald Trump because he depends on federal contracts. He wants to keep getting those contracts. Allocate 1/3 of federal contracts to small businesses. That by itself would help small businesses. As long as you're controlling and making sure that some billionaire is not creating a so-called small business just so they can suck in the money. Sharpen Americans' edge on sectors that are critical to our economic and national security. Again, by all means do it, but that's very vague, and that's not a specific policy, more of something I want to do. End unnecessary degree requirements, increase workers' wages through minimum wage increase. Absolutely, we got to increase the minimum wage. That's the baseline wage that wages are measured by in this country. And as I've said before, again, in previous videos, wages in this country remain stagnant for around 3 to 4 decades. And that's why people started struggling to get by, because inflation outpaced wage growth. As far as the unnecessary degree requirements, absolutely. If there are people advertising jobs and saying you need a degree, but you look at the job and you're like, I really don't need a degree to be able to do that, then yeah, start cutting those degree requirements to get certain jobs. Stand with unions. That's one of the things that Joe Biden did very well. The first president to walk a picket line with union workers. By all means, stand with unions, make it easier to unionize, support unions, support labor having a voice. Fight for affordable child care and pre-K and paid leave. Again, that's something she wants to do. There's no logistics that she's laid out, but it's something we could do, and that's something that is super popular. Universal paid leave for a couple that has kids, super popular, like in the 80-90% range popularity. Protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. By all means, all we got to do is either raise the cap on Social Security or eliminate it altogether, and so Social Security will be indefinitely survivable. Create a fair tax system where no one earning under $400,000 per year will see a tax increase. By all means, raise taxes on people that are making absurd amounts of money, and make sure that average workers aren't seeing the massive tax increases. Require the wealthy to pay their fair share. Most people, even on the right, agree with that. Not politicians, but average people. As far as the earned income tax credit, this is a chart that she has on her website. A link to her website is in the description. A link to Donald Trump's website is in the description. But this is showing how it would affect low-wage workers to expand the earned income tax credit, even for people who don't have children. They would all see a benefit from that. And so I've gone through her plan, I've gone through Trump's plans, and that's where we are on the sort of nitty-gritty of the two candidates and the plans they have on their websites. Most of it is vague stuff they say they want to do. I'll look at Trump's and I'll say this is all bad. Perhaps you disagree with me, but I look at what Trump has on there and I'm like, there are a lot of nightmares. There's a lot of landmines on his website. And in presidential election cycle after presidential election cycle, presidential elections happen in November, and people talk about the so-called October surprise. It seems like cycle after cycle, there's something that comes up in October that changes the complexion of the race. As I said, Biden was dropping in support against Trump, and then Kamala Harris took over for Biden, and she got a surge. She surged ahead of Trump, and then over time, It leveled back out, and right now Kamala Harris is surging again, and perhaps this is the October surprise that ended up causing this change.
Stuff is really, really crazy. We're right there by a wide open border. Where are my proud Latinos at tonight? You guys see what I mean? It's wide open. There's so many of them. It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. There's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there.
And so that was a comedian named Tony Hinchcliffe, who was speaking at recently, this was like last week, speaking at a Trump rally at Madison Square Garden. Trump held this rally, not unlike the 1939 Madison Square Garden Nazi rally that was held. You had lots of fear, lots of hate, and heaping helpings of racism, xenophobia, and bigotry. And you had this comedian, Tony Hinchcliffe. Joe Rogan, on one of his programs, had recommended that Trump get a comedian to open at his rallies, someone like Tony Hinchcliffe. So this was recommended by Rogan on one of his shows. Rogan has a super popular podcast. Rogan has a massive amount of right-wing followers, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone around Trump, one of his kids, one of his dumbass sons, or if his dumbass buddy, for the moment, Elon Musk, saw Rogan suggest he have a comedian open for him like Tony Hinchcliffe, and they went out and got Tony Hinchcliffe. Tony Hinchcliffe had this hate-filled, bigoted rant, comedy routine at the opening of this Madison Square Garden rally. Donald Trump has claimed he has no idea who Tony Hinchcliffe is. He has no idea what he said. He didn't hear the remarks. He doesn't know who the guy is. He doesn't know who hired him to open at that rally. Again, Donald Trump is trying to weasel out of any kind of accountability. Donald Trump's like, I have no clue. Sorry, it doesn't work. That's your rally. It's your campaign. You're the one trying to be president. The remarks that Tony Hinchcliffe made were on a teleprompter. They were vetted by somebody. And the buck stops with the candidate. Sorry, the buck stops with the candidate. It's you. You're the one that's putting all this stuff together to try and help you become president. And I don't see how these Trump supporters see Trump constantly trying to weasel out of any kind of accountability for anything he ever says, anything he ever does. You look at these people that interview Trump's fans at his rallies, and they're coming up with the stupidest, lamest, weakest excuses for Donald Trump, while Donald Trump's trying to weasel out of any kind of accountability. It's utterly absurd. But perhaps that's the October surprise. You had this comedian, Tony Hinchcliffe. He said a lot of bad things, but one of the things he said was he called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. I was in the Army. I served with plenty of people who were from Puerto Rico. One, people in Puerto Rico are Americans. I saw one Trump supporter at a rally asking if people in Puerto Rico love Puerto Rico so much, why are they in America? Puerto Ricans are Americans. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. Puerto Rico should be a state. We should have already granted them statehood. But one thing I know from serving in the military with plenty of people who are from Puerto Rico, they're very proud of their Puerto Rican heritage. I mean, Trump just stepped on his own dick by hiring this dipshit, Tony Hinchcliffe, to open and say this crap. I mean, there are millions of people who are Puerto Rican living in the continental United States. And you have some states that have tens of thousands of people who are Puerto Rican. You have some states with hundreds of thousands. You have states with over 1 million Puerto Ricans living in the state. One of the questions people will be asking, especially if Donald Trump loses, the polling indicates this will be a very close election. No matter who wins, polling indicates it'll be close. Electoral college-wise, it could end up not looking so close. In the Trump-Biden 2020 election, Biden won by a significant amount of electoral votes, but realistically, he only won by around 40 to 60,000 votes across 4 states. I've done a video talking about that, where I laid out the actual numbers. It was a very close election. In the states that I put up on the screen at the beginning of this video, they are going to determine who wins. And it's going to be close. Most likely, no matter who wins, it will be close. Trump may peel back some of the states that Biden won. Kamala Harris needs to hold Pennsylvania. She needs to hold Michigan, Wisconsin. There are some states she needs to hold. North Carolina was presumed to be a red state, but because they have a lunatic, crazy-ass guy running for governor as a Republican, suddenly his unpopularity has catapulted the Democrats in the presidential campaign to where North Carolina is within the margin of error. But from the polling I've seen, averages of polls, the battleground states are all within the margin of error. It depends on how they fall as to who's going to win. Most likely, and it will be decided by, I would say, between 30 and 60,000 votes. The winner of this election will be decided by. And Donald Trump just had somebody go out and insult the hell out of very rightfully proud Puerto Ricans. People in Puerto Rico support this country. People in Puerto Rico, as I said, serve this country in the military. They vote, they pay taxes, they don't get the benefits they should because they're not a state, and they should be a state already. And Trump just went out and insulted them. The Republican Party just went out and insulted this entire group of people who have Puerto Rican heritage who are living in the continental United States. So one of the things people will ask is whether, if Trump loses, was the October surprise being Trump stepping on his own dick by hiring somebody suggested by Joe Rogan, which would be in a way for me hilarious because Joe Rogan is a bit of a dipshit who has a massive following, but he's not necessarily all that. He's in over his head with what he's doing. He brings right-wing people on. He recently did an interview with Trump and just basically spent the entire time kissing Trump's ass, not being somebody who's providing the kind of pushback you need against somebody who's trying to be president. Now I've come to the end of what I'm doing for this video. I hope you stayed with me to this point, because one of the things I wanted to talk about was the mass deportations Donald Trump has talked about. And he's not talked in detail about it, just generally. He gets his fan base riled up by saying he's going to conduct mass deportations. He's going to use the military. He's going to use the National Guard. And I have argued that I think it is logistically impossible or near impossible to carry out mass deportations without violating the Constitution. And I'll start going into it this way. I could not walk around here, and I don't believe you, whoever's watching this video, I don't believe you could walk around your town or city and point out the people who are in this country illegally. I brought up earlier, I wanted to talk about documented and undocumented immigrants. You can be in this country unlawfully and be documented. You can be in this country lawfully or unlawfully and be documented or undocumented. All documented means is that you have documents with you on who you are. We already know that over half of the people who are in this country unlawfully are visa overstays. That accounts for over half the people who are here in the country unlawfully. They're visa overstays. They flew in, a wall's not going to keep them out. They came here on a student visa or a tourist visa or whatever kind of visa. They came here legally on a visa. They overstayed their visa and they didn't leave. And now they're here illegally. They're in the country illegally. That accounts for over half of the people who are here illegally are visa overstays. That's why I said that we should not spend billions of dollars on a stupid wall, because you're already not going to deal with half of the people who are here in the country unlawfully. And somebody who comes here on, say, a tourist visa that has documents on them, they are documented. But if they overstay their visa and don't leave, they are documented, but they're here illegally. They stayed in the country illegally after their visa expired. Somebody who comes here seeking asylum, if you're fleeing your home country, coming here requesting asylum, it's very likely you're not picking up documentation and taking it with you, especially if you have a family, if you have a spouse, if you have kids, especially young kids. You're just trying to get the hell out and to safety. Somebody can come here and request asylum completely legally and not have documentation on them. That would make them someone who is here undocumented but legally in the United States. So you can document it, just means you have documents attesting to who you are. You can be here lawfully, in the country lawfully, documented. You can be here in the country lawfully and undocumented. I hate the way people use undocumented immigrants like that indicates they're here illegally. I mean, there is no such thing as an illegal person. It's not illegal to be a human being. It's not legal, and it's not illegal to exist. But people can be in this country legally, or they can be in this country illegally. And whether you're documented or undocumented doesn't indicate your legal status of being here. And so I wanted to bring that up because it's a pet peeve of mine. People say undocumented like that indicates they're here illegally, and it does not. Some people are in this country legally. Some people are in this country unlawfully, as I said, like a visa overstay. If you just sneak across the Canadian border or the southern border into this country and you're hiding out, there's people that do that, and they're in this country unlawfully, and they may have documentation in their possession. They may not. But, like I said, as far as the mass deportations, I'm an air traffic controller. The control tower I work at, the janitor who comes and cleans the tower, takes out our trash. Very nice man. And he and I chat when he comes to the tower to take the trash out to clean the tower. And he is Hispanic. He's from Mexico, but he's an American citizen. He is in the United States legally. But he has told me that anecdotally from Hispanic people he knows here in Las Vegas, he believes Trump is going to get a lot more of the Hispanic vote than he got in previous elections. He said there's a lot of people he's encountered within the Hispanic community here in Vegas who are going to vote for Trump. And I do not get that. And the thing is, if you are Hispanic, if you're Asian, if you're Indian, if you're black, I mean, Donald Trump's already said he wants to kick out legal Haitians. Haitians that are in this country legally, he wants to expel them. He wants to make them part of this mass deportation. If you are someone who is Hispanic, Indian, black, whatever, I don't see how you can support Trump because of this mass deportation ideology. Like I said, I couldn't, whoever's watching this, whoever you are out there, whether I know you, whether I don't know you, I couldn't, and I don't believe you could walk through your town and point to the people who are here illegally. So how are you going to round up people who are in the country unlawfully? Because some of the people who are in the country unlawfully are white. They're Europeans who came here on a visa and overstayed their visa. Some people are Asian, they overstayed their visa. And the thing is, if Donald Trump carries out a mass deportation, one, I don't know if he can use the military to do that. I don't know that he can use the National Guard to do that. And the thing is, in order to figure out who is here lawfully and unlawfully, he would have to violate their constitutional rights. So at some point, Donald Trump's already said he should be able to suspend the Constitution to match his wants and desires. That's part of his fascist wannabe dictator. That's part of that side to him. There's no way you're going to figure out who is here legally or illegally, without violating their constitutional rights. And the thing is, I don't think he's going to be able to use the military to do it. I think the only way Donald Trump will carry out some form of his mass deportation is to end up getting these crazy, lunatical, pseudo-militias like the Proud Boys and groups like that to be acting as brown shirts to go around and collect up illegals, collecting the illegals. And the thing is, they're not going to necessarily collect up people who are here in the country unlawfully. What you're going to end up with are racists going through towns and cities and collecting up people that they're going to assume are here illegally. And like my child, I have a child who is half American, half Asian, completely a legal, natural-born U.S. citizen, but my child gets mistaken for being Hispanic. And so I would worry about my child being corralled up by one of these nut job, right-wing, racist, pseudo-militia people if they start rounding people up. I don't see how anybody who is Hispanic, and I'm talking specifically to those Hispanics in America, this goes beyond Hispanics. But if you're Hispanic in America, I don't know how you vote for Donald Trump, because you have to at some point realize that if he conducts this mass deportation, you're putting yourself at risk, your family at risk, your friends at risk. Anybody who has any kind of Chicano look to them is being put at risk. People who are brown, black. Like I said, my child is half Asian, half American, gets mistaken for being Hispanic. And when you're talking about crazy right-wing radical racists, somebody from India could end up looking to them like Hispanic and rounded up. Somebody from the Middle East, all kinds of people. You know, there are people in South America who have very dark skin. There are people who have lighter skin. And if this mass deportation gets carried out, I don't see any way it gets carried out without Trump basically putting in some kind of martial law where he's got these crazy nut job right-wing pseudo-militias going around and basically rounding people up. They're going to round up people who are American citizens. They're going to round up immigrants who are in the country legally. They're going to round up a lot of people. They're going to violate a lot of people's constitutional rights. It will be a mess. And you're not going to just put them in a truck and drive them straight over the border. You're not going to pick up somebody in Michigan and drive straight nonstop to the Mexican border and drop them off. I mean, what we're talking about is rounding people up into concentration camps. No other way to put it. Rounding people up, put them in these concentration camps, holding camps, whatever you want to call them. Some people will be there and they're American citizens. Some people will be naturalized immigrants. You'll have all kinds of people. I don't see how, if you are not white as the driven snow. I mean, I think I'm white passing. I'm a Caucasian guy. I've known plenty of people who are Caucasian who didn't necessarily look whitey white. You know, Donald Trump looks like, you know, as white as you can be, just about it. He's pale. I mean, I realize he's orange, but that's because of either spray tan or makeup. But you see Trump without the makeup or the spray tan, and he's just fucking so pale he's almost see-through. I don't see how, if you're not whiter than white, you could vote for Donald Trump, not knowing if you're putting your own family at risk because of this insane mass deportation thing. That's what I can't wrap my head around. And like I said, the janitor at the tower, I said there are a lot of Hispanics here in Vegas who are supporting Trump. I don't get it. They're putting their own families at risk, spouses, children. They're putting themselves at risk because I think the only way Donald Trump accomplishes this mass deportation is by massively violating people's rights and rounding up people in a very racist way. And anyone who's not super white is in danger of being caught up in this. Some people will fight back. There will be shootouts. It would be an absolute nightmare because, like I said, I can't go through here in Las Vegas where I live and point out people who are in the country illegally, so I know you can't either. Donald Trump can't. None of the people around Donald Trump can. They don't know. They don't walk down the street and know somebody's here unlawfully. And that's where I'll leave it. I'm voting for. I'm not voting for Kamala Harris. I've already voted. I sent my ballot in here in Nevada in the mail the day after I got it. I've already voted. My voice was clear. My choice, rather, was clear. We have a choice between sanity and insanity. We have a choice between sanity, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, or insanity, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. It's super clear to me. And so by all means, again, if you made it this far, thank you. I don't know how long this video is. I'm sure it's stupid long. But if you made it this far, thank you. Give me a like. Give me a subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Am I completely off base? Am I completely wrong? Some people think Kamala Harris is going to end up with a landslide win. Some people think Donald Trump's going to end up with a landslide win. The polling looks like it's going to be super tight, super close. And I'm hoping America makes the right choice. I'm hoping certainly people who are non-white look at Trump's agenda and say, ain't no way I'm voting for this guy. I'm not putting myself at risk. But leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. And by all means, vote. And please vote Kamala.